Welcome to Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show. I am Kyle Anthony and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the prediction show for UFC 253, Isreal Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. We're going to talk about two free plays that we have on this card. We are coming off a phenomenal performance, 3-1 last weekend. Did hit on our both best bet top 4% plays. We had at minus 120, we had Johnny Walker. I was a little scared of that play, I'm not gonna lie. That play came out there. Walker got a little stumbled, got a little wobbled, got it together, got us to cash in on that top play. And then also the other top play we had was Andre Ewell at minus 190, also cashed in on that as well. So 4% plays overall have been fantastic for this year. I have another 4% play loaded up on Wagertalk right now. It's a package of two plays including another 4% play. This year, my 4% plays, I am 77% winner, and just on 4% plays, clients have earned 44 units in return. So it's been a profitable year to say the least. Really excited about this card, talking about it. Have the plays loaded for this card. Want to talk about more on the two plays that we're going to be talking about. And also, it's been such a great year, and I talked to some of the people over Wagertalk. I wanted to actually give a really great promotion up until Sunday midnight. And the promotion is going to be, we're going to knock off as much as we can on that year-long subscription. So for those of you that have been wanting to be clients for the year, wanting to get that, have a massive savings and have been paying the, roughly anywhere from $19 to $39 per event, we're going to be doing now up until Sunday. It'll be with coupon code KYLE200, capitals KYLE200, and you're going to be getting it the 12 months from the time of purchase, 12 months for $399. For $399, a massive savings for those people that have consistently been buying. It's going to be a long-term investment, and again, it has paid off. If you've been starting from this year, you have a return on investment of 54.21%. It's been a great year. Hopefully you guys are going to jump aboard, and we're going to continue to cash those tickets. So let's get into the first play, and of course we're going to be talking about the main event of the evening between Isreal Adesanya and Paulo Costa. Now we've got right now the current line is Isreal is a minus 180, and you've got Costa who's a plus 152, roughly in that range, depending what book that you're going to be shopping at. And like I like to do all the time, go down 3 fights, pass fights for each fighter, see what one fighter can expose the other, and if it makes sense to place a bet. So what we're going to first talk about is the current champion, Isreal Adesanya. 3 fights ago, he fought Kelvin Gastelum. Now, this was an interesting fight because this is another situation where all the time, Isreal has such a massive reach advantage. And in this situation here, he's got an 8-inch reach advantage, huge reach advantage over Gastelum. Gastelum is a smaller guy for the division to begin with. And this is a spot here where really Isreal is so fantastic at using distance management. Not only does he have that reach, but he's just great at just keeping his opponent just outside of their striking range, where he's still able to counterattack. And that was something that Gastelum, although he had certain success in certain spots, that was where Gastelum, honestly, he just was lunging forward. And you see that a lot, and we're going to go through some of those fights, but you see that a lot, where you're looking to counter off of Isreal, or you're looking to really maybe dive in front and try to start an interaction, or an exchange with him, and you can't get inside of that distance. Isreal, for the most part through this fight, again, when I was rewatching it, there was limited success from Kelvin. I mean, there were some rounds where maybe he took, and very close rounds, and maybe a little less happened earlier on, and then Isreal started to pick him apart later, and then you had Gastelum who landed a big shot, and it's almost as if when a guy gets hurt who never really gets hurt, and you see him get hurt, it almost takes over that round, because Isreal could sit outside for the entire round, pick him apart, good footwork, good movement, jab, work a combination from the outside, and then he gets hit once with a big shot, and the crowd it's a wow moment, because you don't see Isreal really get hurt too much. But in that fight, it was just a great performance for him overall. I thought Isreal looked good. Again, distance management was fantastic. He had a lot of physical advantages over Gastelum, but he goes out there and gets that decision victory. 2 fights ago, he fought Robert Whittaker. Now, this was the title fight here. This is a big fight for him here. Big arena that they were fighting at. And this was a situation where, Robert has just been an absolute destroyer. He was dealing with some injuries, but just been an absolute destroyer going into this. And to me, this was a 2-round striking clinic for Isreal Adesanya. This is exactly shows you what makes this guy so incredible with his striking. And Robert has been another guy that has fought, wars with Yoel Romero and Jacare, and he's really had great performances. And this is a spot here where, it was just a picking apart Robert Whittaker for that first round. And well, the whole fight, really. But that first round, he was really just kind of gauging it. And that's something that Isreal really does fantastic, is he really calculates. He really starts to utilize some of the information that he's getting from his opponent. And from there, he starts to work his offense from there. And he's such a great counter striker that even in this spot, Robert was almost getting frustrated. You could see early in that fight, because the fight only lasted 2 rounds, but early in that fight, Robert couldn't get that. He couldn't really land the shots. And he was doing the same thing that Gastelum was doing. He was kind of lunging forward, kind of trying to really shorten that distance and lunge forward. And he kept chipping away. And that was really where, in that end of that first round is where the big combination came from Isreal. He kind of backed up through that kind of check hook, dropped him. Probably would have ended the fight if there was, maybe another 20 seconds left in the fight. He kind of ended it with him standing over Whittaker. And that was, pretty much where I think, Robert, I think even in the corner was kind of saying, we got to get going a little bit here. And it was almost like, Whittaker was defeated already. He kind of looked at that situation, couldn't find the distance, couldn't work his combinations, couldn't get into that exchange that he wanted to get exchanged with, or even the brawling situation, because Whittaker is he is not scared to stand toe-to-toe with anybody, but where he's got a guy that's just such, good footwork and working those angles and having that long reach, it was way too much. And then going into that second round, of course, the same thing really happened. Whittaker again looked frustrated. He really almost wanted to bait him in to strike more, where Whittaker just couldn't get the distance, inside that distance. Landed another big shot, finishes him in the second round, gets the KO victory, becomes a champ, and gets the title there. So then most recently he fought Yoel Romero. Now this is a different type of fight, and both of these guys fought Yoel, so we can definitely kind of take a little bit away from that. But Yoel obviously is more of a explosive fighter, has a lot of power, and is a wrestler that kind of fell in love with his big striking and the flying knees and all these really high explosive moves that he has. And this was a fight here where, Isreal is a counter striker, so he's looking for those attacks to happen. And when you've got someone like Yoel who kind of waited, he didn't really go out there and, kind of just full blown, kind of what Whittaker did, kind of what, Gastelum did, where they're not scared to exchange, and that kind of falls into the trap of what Isreal Adesanya is very good at, with the counter striking, the quick hands, getting a good read on his opponent, landing the shot, working around. And again, in a bigger cage where you're not going to be, fighting at apex, he's going to have a lot of movement in that cage, and that's going to definitely favor him compared to somebody like Paulo Costa, who we'll get into in a minute. But in this fight here, it was a great fight. I mean, it was another nice showing for him. Yoel had some highlight spots. But for the most part, there wasn't much action going on because he was looking for that push. He was looking for Yoel to kind of land the big shot, and he didn't want to get baited into, okay, I'll fire first. Let me fire first. And that is really what I think Yoel was looking for, to take him out of his rhythm by having him fire first. That didn't happen. It was kind of a, not the most, explosive kind of fight, but Isreal did what he had to do. And I think that is a big thing in any fight, where he's not, if the knockout comes to him, he's ready for that. If the game plan kind of goes a different way, he's going to stick to his own game plan. He's going to say, listen, I'm going to do what I do to really go out there and win that fight. So in that situation there, he goes there, gets a decision victory. Not the most explosive fight compared to some of the other fights that he's had, but he goes out there and beats a very tough Yoel Romero. Now Paulo Costa on the other side. 3 fights ago he fought Johnny Walker. Now this is a fight I was at Madison Square Garden, and Costa was, honestly, I do forget the actual line, but it was a very generous line. I mean, if I can remember, maybe a minus 160, 70, 50, somewhere in that range there. And Johnny Hendricks, I think it's a Johnny Walker. Johnny Hendricks is pretty much was at this point, I mean, he had his moment, he was on a big decline, and everything that you saw with Paulo was just going to be everything favored him in this spot. Hendricks is not scared to go out there and stand and brawl. He's done it with other fighters when he had gotten a couple wins and had some big moments. But this was just a landslide. I mean, you even saw it. He looked drained. Hendrick looked drained. This was like a sacrifice at the end of this. I mean, pretty much big shots landed. Big movement forward from Costa. He definitely is the guy that likes to put the pressure on, shorten that distance, use his power, kind of bully his opponent. That's exactly what he did against Hendricks. It was a TKO victory in the second round. Not much to take away from this fight, because the next fight I definitely want to dive into. But this fight here, it was a landslide victory, and not much that Hendricks really offered, so he goes up there and gets that victory. But 2 fights ago, he fought Uriah Hall. Now, this is a very interesting fight, and I actually watched this fight twice because there's a lot to take away that I think that you can really put into this fight that's going to be happening Saturday night. And Hall definitely has a similar style to Isreal Adesanya. Now, obviously Adesanya has, overall better skill set, but Hall definitely is that flashy, fighter, good kickboxing, good movement, has some great spinning attacks. Overall, they can definitely have similarities. And this was a situation here where the 7-inch reach advantage was for Hall as well. So there was definitely some similarities that things are going to be happening here. Now, early in this fight, really it looked, the jab was enormous for Hall. And that, again, is something that Isreal Adesanya can absolutely use going into Saturday night. He definitely was able to stand outside, pepper him with the jab, keep that distance. And Paul, you could see that he was definitely getting slightly frustrated himself too. He couldn't really shorten that, shorten the distance. He was looking for the big shot. And the difference between how Paulo fights and how Isreal fights is he's not scared to just keep touching it. Keep touching it, keep throwing the jab, throw it straight, maybe, throw a leg kick, throw a body kick, stand outside, where Paulo was looking to just detonate your head on one big shot. And Hall was able to really kind of expose that. And obviously it's no hidden secret. That's what Paulo's coming forward. There's no hidden secret there. But you could see that the jab and just keeping that distance and working the distance management and kind of mixing up the combinations did throw off Paulo early in that first round. And then going a little bit later into the round, you could see up against the cage a little bit. That was where Paulo definitely has his success. He's always looking to shorten the distance, cut off the ring, get in tight, work the crazy combinations that he throws, the heavy shots, and then from there, look to see if he can just melt you up against the fence, landing the big shots. But Hall definitely had a lot of success, and almost more success than I remembered, when the fight happened. That's why I always like to go back. I've seen all these fights already, but I'd love to go back and just go in there with a different mindset compared to just enjoying the fight when you first watch it. But again, Paul looking to land the big shot. In that second round, Hall once again had some nice combinations, landed some nice shots. He kept using the jab, and you even hear Joe Rogan on those on the cast even kind of making the statements as well and saying, Paulo, he's definitely not looking for, the quick combination. He's kind of cutting the cage off, but he's allowing this jab to land. That jab landed every single time that Hall threw it. Every single time. And now if you give that opportunity for a guy like Isreal, who's going to really mix up the combinations, who's really going to just not throw the jab and a 1-2 and back off, he's going to start working the cage, he's going to start working those angles, and that is something he can absolutely expose. And then even to the end of that second round, Hall rocked Costa. He didn't go down, he didn't get dropped, but he was hurt. And that was a spot there where, again, it shows that there's a vulnerability in this position where you've got the different type of fighter, you've got that kind of fighter where this was something that really Paul should have just kind of steamrolled through Hall. In that first round, I kind of leaned towards Hall in that first round. In that second round, Hall had success up until he got knocked out. And that was, again, where, you've got the toughness, of course, of Costa. He's able to go out there, he takes the big shots. And that was a spot where, again, up against the cage, once Hall landed the big shot, he kind of pushed forward. He looked to kind of lay it on him. He didn't take his time. That was a big mistake on his part because Paulo, it doesn't take much. He landed some body shots, landed a headshot, just kind of wildly throwing because he is a brawler. Got Hall hurt, and that was where he started, had him up against the fence, started landing the big shots, and then it really changed from a great situation, possibly a first round win, and a second round, favoring Hall, hurting Costa, to all of a sudden he loses the fight. Obviously, great showing from Paulo to come out with the victory and come out of a tough situation. It wasn't like he was blasted. It wasn't like he was rocked and stumbling all over the place. But he's landed a nice shot, and a guy like Isreal is going to be able to do more damage than someone like Hall. And so he goes up there. He does get the TKO victory in that second round, but definitely some nuggets I think you take away from going into Saturday night. And then 3 fights ago, he fought Yoel Romero, and this was a fight here. You got two monsters going at it, and this is again a situation. We've got somebody like Yoel, who, great fighter, but he does not have the striking that Isreal has by any means, by any, obviously he's explosive and he's got a lot of different kind of techniques and movements and different things that he brings to the cage, and obviously some of the wrestling he brings in and strength and all these things. But this was a fight here where just two guys just went out there and they just brawled. I mean, the first round, you had both of them got rocked and dropped, and big round, early it looked like Costa was kind of hammering those big shots, and then Yoel kind of does the weird movements, and he kind of is willing to go up against the fence, take some big shots from Paulo, and then he kind of goes back, he kind of moves and has his tongue out and kind of does these things where Paulo was just dead on looking to kill you. And those first 2 rounds, I would give it to Costa. I mean, a lot of people were saying it was very close or Yoel won the fight. I would definitely give the first 2 rounds to Paulo. I think that he won those first 2. But going into that third round, I think is the most concerning if you're going to be betting Costa. And the reason being is because he was exhausted. Now, he's a big movement kind of guy. Costa is a big movement kind of guy where if he lands something, he could put your lights out, or just really, really, rock you up against a cage, and where he just, puts that volume out when you're up against the cage and melts you from there. But, going into that third round, I mean, he was exhausted. He was just, and it was and only one time in his UFC career has he gone to the third round. So this just really showed that, if those early rounds don't happen and he doesn't able to pour it on, it gets a little worrisome for anybody who's looking at Costa going deeper into this fight. And in this fight here, that third round, I would give it to Yoel, because Paulo he kept looking up at the clock. He was very tired. He didn't really have much, kind of push any more volume to be pushed out at that point. He knew, I think, that he had won the first 2, but he took a beating in that third round. Ended up getting the victory there, so he did what he needed to do to get the victory, but definitely some things to take away from that. Now, with that all being said, obviously, you've got Isreal is an elite kickboxer, fantastic distance management. We've talked about that. Great with his reach. Not only does he just have the reach, but he's great at using it. He knows how to utilize it. He's good footwork, and he's just a top-level counter striker. And the aggressive style of Paulo Costa, I believe, it actually plays against Paulo in this fight. I think that there's a lot of great things that could happen where he pours it on and almost, shortens that distance. Obviously, he doesn't want to stand outside and allow this big reach advantage that Isreal has to just stand outside and pick him apart, of course. But a good mix is what he's going to need to do to get this victory. But if he's pouring it on, it's definitely going to be interesting how that pans out. And obviously, he's not scared if a fighter's coming forward. And Isreal, again, is a guy that wants to counter-strike. So if he allows those shots to happen, he's going to be looking for those openings. And then you've got the other side, you've got Paulo. Paulo, he's got the heavy pressure, he's got power, he's got great volume. I mean, that's one thing that he has that really, almost breaks his opponents, where he gets you in tight, he's pouring on the volume, and he's the kind of guy also, you don't get many of these guys where they don't even care if your hands are up, he's still firing. And of course, some people look for, you're looking for maybe an opening, you're looking for a body shot, looking for maybe the side of the head, you're looking to move. He's the kind of guy where I'm going to blast your guard, and it's still going to hurt you. I'm just going to fire at your forearm, at your shoulder. So he's the kind of guy where once that starts happening, it's almost like I'm blocking you, and you're still causing damage. That really breaks opponents. I don't see Isreal kind of shelling up where some people do. Of course, he's hurt. That's a different story. But, and he does mix it up well. He does, he's looking for the body, he's looking for the head, and he's just throwing heavy volume. But again, I think a concerning part goes to the cardio. I think the cardio is definitely concerning in a 5-round fight where he's only went to a decision one time in the UFC, and that's concerning. I mean, most of these fights have ended in the first and second round or middle second round, and now he's got to go deeper. And a guy like Isreal Adesanya, I think, is very smart. I think the game plan, they know, the first round or two, first round and a half, it's going to be it's going to be a forward, heavy pressure from Costa. There's no doubt about it. He's not going to, not going to stand outside. I think he's going to say, I'm going for broke early. At least that's the way I look at it. And you've got the reach advantage again. He's going to have a 7 or 8 inch reach advantage on Costa, so there's a lot that I like here about what he does. And the way that Uriah landed that jab throughout that fight with a guy who, obviously is not at the level where Isreal Adesanya is, but that's going to be a big part. So there's so much I think here that I like. The line has dipped down. Again, you're looking at minus 170, minus 180 at this point. I like Isreal Adesanya here. I just think there's a lot to like about him. The boxing that you have from Costa, I think is fantastic. I think there's, but he doesn't mix it up. He's not throwing leg kicks. He's not throwing, there's not many, he doesn't really use his legs as much. He's just bulldozing you forward. And if the limited skill set that Paulo has compared to just the weapons and the movement that Isreal has, and in a cage that's going to be bigger, in a small cage, I would definitely be a little bit more worried where Israel's not going to have that movement, but they're going to have the normal size cage, and this is going to be a fight where that is going to tremendously help Israel get this victory. So I'm on Isreal Adesanya here. Minus 170, minus 180, I think is the price right now. I think the price is good. I know that I still feel that I know a lot of people are talking about the power and that kind of thing. I think that first round is going to be scary. I think that Paul's going to be looking to throw the big shots, but the light-footedness, the angles that Israel works, I just think he goes out there and gets his victory. So that is my first replay, is Isreal Adesanya at minus 180. And the next one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to run through this one quick. I'm not going to dive through everything, kind of just give my thoughts on each fighter. And it's going to be the co-main event and the other title fight between Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz. So, okay, this one you've got right now, you've got the current line, you've got Reyes is a minus 290, you've got Jan at plus 225, and, Reyes he was, before the fight with Jones, and that's the only fight I really want to kind of dive into kind of quickly, is just what happened in that fight, because there was a lot of impressive things that Reyes did, and then we're also going to follow up a little bit with how if Jan can actually expose some of those things. But Reyes was on a 4-fight winning streak, going out there, fighting fantastic, getting some knockouts, getting some wins over some really high-level guys. And in that fight against Jones, the thing that I thought was interesting was that a lot of people when they fight John Jones is the fact that, and even Anthony Smith talked about it, he kind of snake charms you into his own way of fighting. He kind of pulls you into, standing outside and not cutting off the cage. And Jones obviously is another guy, and Israel's very, they're very similar kind of fighters where they've got the long reach, and they're fantastic at utilizing that reach. And guys and of course in the weapons and the way he's able to throw different strikes and angles and the creative striking he uses is very difficult for fighters, of course. And in this fight here, Reyes brought the fight to him. I mean, that was something interesting. That first round, you saw that Reyes brought that fight directly to John Jones. And I think that took him completely by surprise, where he was pushing forward, he landed some big shots right away, and that was something where you didn't really see normally, where John Jones right away was uncomfortable. He almost was overwhelmed with the heavy shots coming forward. He rocked John Jones early in that, and then he's even throwing in the leg kicks. So the mixing up against Jones, and Jones had trouble kind of picking up where these strikes were coming from, says an absolute lot about Reyes and the way that he fights. Mixed it up tremendously, and that first round into that second round, it was, in my opinion, it was Reyes. I mean, it was all Reyes there. I actually did bet John Jones in this fight, but, it was, the first 2 rounds, it's almost like, holy cow, like, wow, he kind of exploded into this fight, and that was something where, can he last? Now that comes into that, if he can't put Jones away, can he last the 5 rounds? And, in a championship fight against one of the greatest, how can he continue to go and what can he do? So into that second round was the same thing. You had almost Jones retreating. There were spots where, Reyes had him up against the cage, and Jones did the, almost like, Overeem does it sometimes, where he kind of, runs away or kind of, scurries away, and you had John Jones doing stuff like that. When you got Jones retreating in that situation, of course he wants to get in the center of the cage and start to work his angles again, but he's the kind of guy that's good with his elbows, good in the tie clinch, able to dirty box and then get outside. He's, again, very creative all over the cage. And he had John Jones retreating, which is, again, an impressive thing coming from Reyes. And then going into the third round, you had Jones actually start to press a little bit. That was when, you start to see the tilt down a little bit from Reyes. Reyes' volume kind of slowed down a little bit. It was a lot closer than some of the other rounds, but that was a round where I think it, almost said, this is where the switch happens. This is where the turning point is. Reyes is going to crumble now. He went for the big push forward, couldn't put Jones away. That was the way it almost felt. And then going to that fourth round, Reyes looked great again. I mean, Reyes came out firing again, pushed forward, and then you even had Jones look like he got, maybe he got hurt a little bit, looked for the takedown, and then impressively how quickly Reyes got up. I mean, that I think is, again, something you can absolutely take away. I'm not sure, will Jan look to take him down? That's obviously, that's very tough to tell, but it shows that he's had the strength to get up in the fourth round when he was being taken down from a guy like Jon Jones. It says an absolute lot about Reyes, about his cardio. It says a lot about his strength, overall strength, and just his technique. So that's a huge, huge thing, I believe, that, again, he could take into the fight. And then in the fifth round, fourth, fifth round overall, it was, I would say Jones kind of took that fifth round. I actually did have it very close. I mean, it's very hard to tell who won the fight. I actually was happy to cash that ticket, but I do not blame anybody who had Reyes and did not win that, and did not get to cash that ticket, because what a fight it was, very, very close. But that, overall, in general, the whole reason I'm going over that is that you're going against one of the top strikers ever in the UFC, and he went out there and he fought brilliantly, even in a losing effort, fought tremendously, and it's just something you have to take away going into this fight, into this title fight. And then you've got Jan on the other side. He went out there, KO'd Luke Rockhold, some glass chins, but he KO'd Luke Rockhold, and he KO'd Corey Anderson. Definitely, some nice wins and some brutal knockouts. And then he ended up having the split decision win over Jacare. So definitely some notable names there. Definitely some world-class fighters there. But there you have it with kind of what he did. But with that being said, you got Jan here. Jan's got the power. Jan's got great counter striking. He does wait for his opponent, I think, a little bit too much. And kind of allows the other opponent, his volume's not that high. Again, he has had those early knockouts. I get it. I get it. But he's a kind of guy that I would say slightly more on the basic striking side than having this, and he definitely has the power, the Polish power he talks about. But the striking is not, this world-class striking that he has. Where Reyes is just fighting Jon Jones, trained for him, was in there against one of the best, lasted 5 rounds, says an absolute lot. And then you've got Reyes on your side, who fights very relaxed, explosive, and also a big part of this is that he lasted 5 rounds. Excuse me. That he lasted 5 rounds. That he lasted those 5 rounds with Jon Jones shows the cardio. Not saying that Jan doesn't, but shows cardio that he actually can last those 5 rounds in a heavy, heavy exchanges, lots of volume, lots of grappling, lots of movement. And I think the big difference here with these two is the fact that the striking. I just don't see the striking from Jan being something that Reyes is just not prepared for. It just isn't something that he's seen. Facing Jon Jones, Jan definitely is a great fighter. Now the price here, obviously you've got the price is -290 on Reyes. You've got, and that's a very high price tag right on him. You've got Jan who's +220. Now, I do like Reyes here, but I think the method of victory here is a great play. I know it's a 5-round fight, it's a championship fight, but I'm going Reyes by decision at +270. I like this price here. I think it's a good spot. You've even got the knockout, I think is +125, which is not a bad, to sprinkle that as well, to sprinkle both of them. I'm not going to sit here and say that, Jan has no chance at all. I mean, obviously, these are two great fighters, but I love this fight. Gonna be a tight fight. I think Jan has durability here. I think he's gonna be able to last 5 rounds. I think it's gonna be close, but I love the price of +270 on Reyes to get the decision. So that is my other free play. So those are my 2 free plays for UFC 253. Now again, if you are looking to be a year-long subscriber, be a year-long client of mine, go in there, you can take a look. And the coupon code is Kyle, all caps, Kyle200. It'll be $3.99 for the next 12 months. You will get all of picks. They are actually emailed to you as soon as I hit it. Put into the system, you get emailed those, you get the write-up, you get it all there. Definitely check it out, and again, follow me on Twitter at Kyle Anthony UFC. Like, subscribe, all that great stuff, and I will see you on the next show. This is going to be a fun one. Let's cash again. We keep cashing those tickets. We'll see you next time, and this is Kyle Anthony's UFC Betting Show, and I'll see you next time.